OK，开始吧。
Good afternoon, everyone. So today we are going to present our work on Crazy Rich Asians from 2018. So here's our group members, Liu Hongye, Huang Minghao, and Liang Jiaxi. So, for the beginning of the part, let me briefly introduce you the movie and our research. So, we aim to critically analyze the representation of Asian cultural stereotypes in the 2018 film Crazy Rich Asians through the lens of post-colonial theory by examining the portrayal of Asian identities, class distinctions, and cultural tropes within the narrative. For the plot, Chinese American New York Rachel Chu travels to Singapore with her boyfriend Nick Young to attend his best friend's wedding and discovers that he comes from one of Asia's most wealthy, prominent family. Rachel becomes a target for his judgmental mother Eleanor, who wants nothing more than to break them up. Directed by a Chinese American Zhuang Chu, based on the novel of the same name. Obviously, it is a cheesy movie, but let's find out the reason we select the movie as our target. So, um, for the second part, I want to introduce you the theory we are going to apply, that is post-colonial theory. So, what is meant by post-colonial theory seems very easy. It is basically theory after or post-colonialism. But put simply, post-colonialism theory is about colonialism, emphasizing the effects of colonialism on both the colonized and the colonizer. So, to be specific, the Orientalism, according to Edward Said's 1987 book, Orientalism, it is a Eurocentric perspective that reflects the domination of the West over the East, from the early explanation of capitalism and imperialism to the present. It is a racist construction of Eastern societies as stagnant, militaristic, irrational, in contrast to Western societies as progressive, civil, rational, and individualistic. By extension, this approach also portrays the people of Asia as intrinsically inferior to Europeans. And the second people is Ami Baba and his concept of hybridity and mimicry. So Baba introduced the concept of hybridity as a critical framework for understanding the cultural dynamics between colonizers and colonized. His ideas are most prominently discussed in his seminal work, The Location of Culture. Baba's concept of hybridity challenges traditional notions of identity, culture, and power, including side Orientalism. He uses it to explain the complex interaction and negotiation between different cultures, particularly those of colonizers and colonized people. So, as his second concept of mimicry. So, Baba's mimicry is a part of a larger concept of visualizing the post-colonial situation. It is such kind of binary opposition between authority and oppression. Baba states that all modes of imposition, including the demand on the colonized to be like colonizer, results in mimicry. Baba believes that the mode of asserting authority over the colonized gave rise to mimicry. And
OK，
let's go to the analyzed parts.
OK, let's go to the Sync one. NYU economic professor. From scene one, from the first scene of the film, we learned that Rachel is an economic professor at NYU and a Chinese American who was born and raised in the United States. Rachel's role gives her a certain authority and independence, which is seen as a sign of success in Western society. She's torn between traditional Chinese culture and modern Western culture. And this cultural intervening and conflict is precisely what postcolonialism emphasizes. Next page. And let's move to the scene 2, dialogue with her mother. In this scene, the film presents Eastern cultural symbols, such as red symbolizing good luck, to Western audience in a strange or exotic manner, thereby highlighting the exoticist characteristics of Eastern culture as perceived through a Western lens. Within the framework of Orientalism, the West often views Eastern culture as the other, perceiving Eastern cultural symbols such as red as mysterious, even too traditional or ancient, forming a stark contrast with the modern, rational, and superior Western culture. This approach of viewing Eastern traditions through a Western lens embodies the Orientalist perspective within postcolonialism, reinforcing Western cultural hegemony and its security of Eastern culture. And let's keep going. From the perspective of post-colonial theory, specifically the concept of hybridity and first space, Rachel's mother mentions that all good Chinese children do that, implying that Chinese children should take on the economic responsibility of supporting their parents. This reflects the traditional Chinese family responsibility mindset. Rachel, as a Chinese American living in Western culture, reflects her identity struggle at the intersection of Eastern and Western cultures. Through her acceptance or rejection of this notion, she exists in the state of cultural hybridity, balancing her identification with traditional cultural responsibilities while also being influenced by Western society, which advocates personal autonomy and independence, thereby forming a hybridity space, cultural space. Okay, let's move to the scene 3. First visit to Yang's. Although the characters in the film portray the luxurious Asian upper class, the portrayal is still limited to Western stereotypes of Eastern aesthetics. From Western perspective, while this high-end party showcases the success of Asians, this portrayal is shaped by Western-defined standards. In other words, while the status and wealth of these characters indicate their high standing in Asian society, this luxury is expressed through a profusion of Eastern elements such as decorations and cultural symbols. Western audiences often perceive these elements as symbols of exoticism, rather than having an intrinsic cultural value. This reinforces the Western stereotype of Asians as a model minority. It may also portray the group of Asian tycoons as the other, culturally shaped to fit Western aesthetic idea of success. And let's keep going. As a typical Chinese mother, Elena emphasizes that Chinese parents generally have a strong sense of responsibility and believe that they should shape their children's lives. This behavior reflects the traditional Chinese cultural concept of family responsibility, where parents have a high degree of control and expectations for their children's future. From the perspective of post-colonial theory concept of hybridity and first space, the scene illustrates the complexity of cultural conflict and integration. In Eastern culture, parents, even to some extent, determine their children's career and marriage choices. Western society may criticize their practice, viewing it as limiting personal independence and freedom of the development. Elena's remarks highlight the tension and conflict between cultures. Rachel, as a first-place entity, embodies the ongoing process of cultural fusion, selection, and adaptation between East and West. Her identity is shaped by the pool of two cultures forming a multi-layered identity. Let's let's move to the next scene. Also is the first phase to Young's from the perspective of Orientalism and Western gaze in postcolonial theory. This scene reflects the Western society's standardized scrutiny of Eastern culture, particularly in terms of wealth and social status. In the film, Young's relatives and friends demonstrate their intense focus on the wealth by asking Rachel if she belongs to a wealthy family. Western society often portrays Eastern culture as a symbol of wealth and materialism. And this impression is particularly pronounced in the context of China and other Asian countries. The scene in the film through the characters' curiosity about Rachel's family wealth illustrates how the West viewed wealth in Eastern society as a marker of cultural identity rather than considering other aspects of the individual. This impression reflects the superficial understanding of Eastern society in Western culture, which assumed that every family in Eastern society must possess obvious symbols of wealth to be considered qualified.
Okay, the scene Thor is about the Nick's and Rachel's single party, and we can consider it as a single party. The luxury bachelor party is labeled as a model minority behavior, which reflects how the Chinese community caters to the expectations of Western mainstream society through performative consumption. This model label is essentially a continuation of colonial discourse. The West portrays Chinese Singaporeans as a rich and extravagant group. On the one hand, to prove the illusion of Asian racial equality, on the other hand, to cover up the characteristics of the overall economy situations of Asians. And this is the reason why Homi Bhabha's mimicry theory is applicable here. Chinese people try to gain recognition by imitating the lifestyle of white allies, such as luxury parties, but they are always marginalized because they are almost the same, but not quite. And the Oriental elements, such as Cheongsam traditional rituals deliberately highlighted in the party, are essentially to reduce culture to the family Oriental customs. This kind of performance is not an expression of cultural confidence, but a prediction of Western audience expectation of Orientalists. As Edwards said, it satisfies the West one-dimension imagination of the East culture. In previous Western film and television works, the image of Oriental Asians has three characteristics: mysterious, luxurious, and the conservative. These three characters ignoring uh let's move to the okay. These three characteristics are being ignored, and that Oriental elements should really have. And after the single party, Rachel and the Nick's family make dumplings together to gain happiness. This scene marks the act of making dumplings as a manifestation of traditional Chinese family responsibility, and simplifies the label of American fast food plus nursing home to a manifestation of American individualism. And in sense, it is a replication of colonial discourse from the Orientalist perspective of Edward said. In the Eastern world, China is portrayed as a collectivist myth with families full of warmth and filthy piety and loving traditional handicrafts as a family activity. While the United States in the Western world is stereotyped as cold individualism, with people loving fast food and people abandoning the elderly when they grow up. And of course, this behavior and this opposition serves the cognitive, the you can click the click the screen to make the picture happen. Yes, okay. This opposition serves the cognitive framework of the Western centrism, turning non-Western culture into pre-modern myths and defaulting Western values to modern standards. Making dumplings here becomes a solidified symbol of the Oriental impression, while the family power structure behind it, and such as gender division of labor, is ignored. On the other hand, by stigmatizing American nursing home as abandoning the American elderly, the scene implements reversed Orientalism, using the same essentialism to confirm the West, but in the same way without transcending colonial logic. This scene forcibly splits the real family model and ignores the hybrid scene in reality, and which is there are many Chinese families who not only make dumplings but also send their elderly to nursing homes in reality. On the other hand, many Western families refuse to send their elderly to nursing homes. For example, many Italian families insist on home care. Overseas, making dumplings is essentially hybrid. For example, in terms of the choice of dumpling materials. Using store-bought dumpling skins and the different filling is also a common thing for many Chinese families. And in the scene 6, Eleanor and Rachel sat together to play mahjong. This elevation of individual behavior to national behavior actually pathologizes individualism as an American disease, replicates the Western practice of disparaging Eastern culture as overly collectivist, and attributes the pursuit of happiness entirely to the selfish character of Americans, while ignoring structural factors such as the influence of American social values and the concept of the nuclear family on the natives. In Baba's theory, this reverse Orientalism is a variant of colonial imitation. The colonized copy the binary logic of the colonizer, such as selflessness and the selflessness to claim autonomy, but still fall into the paradox of almost the same, but not exactly the same. And we can say in this scene, Eleanor's still uses Western concepts, and for example, she considers selfishness as the equals to the pursuit of happiness as a benchmark. But inadvertently confirms the dominance of the Western discourse. Okay, next move to the next scene. Okay, and in the last scene, Nix set a propose to the Rachel at the end of the film. Nick, in order to win back Rachel, took the initiative to show up in the economy class of the plane, where she left and formally proposed to Rachel to express his deep love. In Western romantic narratives, proposals often take place in first class or luxury places. The setting of proposal in the economy class subverts the Western narrative structure of romance equals to first class, and the successful proposal in the end is a successful example of the integration of Eastern and the Western cultures from a Western perspective.
So when we come to the conclusion part, Crazy Rich Asians consciously challenges historical Orientalist stereotypes of Asian poverty and passivity. So it vividly illustrates the lived hybridity of the Asian elite, yet it risks creating new Orientalist spectacles whether the director or the original author of the novel intended to be ironic or not. The character's mastery of global elite codes exemplifies mimicry, yet their rationalized identity and cultural embeddities ensure they remain almost the same, but not quite. The film's significance lies not in escaping Orientalist frameworks or presenting real life, but in its complex navigation within them. After all, it is just a commercial film, representing a dynamic, often contradictory negotiation. And the further beyond the screen, we want to talk about that. It is not no doubt that the film was a huge success at the North American box office, but it performed poorly in most Asian countries like Singapore and China, which means the film worked for Westerners who have little knowledge of Asian culture or Asian diaspora. We must engage critically with such representations. True understanding necessitation moving beyond the screen to embrace the diverse and dynamic realities of cultural hybridity and actively challenge both old and new stereotypes fostered by the legacies of Orientalism. The film opens the door, but walking through it requires critical consciousness and a commitment to deeper, more incredible engagement. And that's all of our work on the movie Crazy Rich Asians. Thank you.